As most of you already know by now, Danielle got dumped by Yohan on the tell-all season finale, and fans around the world rejoiced.
Woo, yeah! Danielle got dumped! Danielle got dumped! Woo!
But as I kept watching the tell-all unfold, my smug sense of schadenfreude steadily turned to frustration. Because, although karma had finally struck, one thing had become clear.
Danielle still doesn't know what she did wrong. I have to tell her.
Danielle has this ex, whom she's still friends with, named Talion. Talon. But notably, he wasn't a previous romantic partner of hers. Instead, he was more of a no-strings-attached,
fun bunny guy.
And, conveniently for the show, he just so happens to be in the Dominican Republic while they're filming a reality TV show all about relationship drama. Danielle wanted to meet up with her ex and say hi. Yohan wasn't cool with that, but she went anyway. Sensing Yohan is still uncomfortable with it, Danielle insisted that Yohan meet her ex himself, hoping it would help Yohan see that Talon posed no threat to their relationship. Yohan was still not cool with that, but eventually acquiesced, or was forced by the producers, met up with Pink Flamingo Talon, and proceeded to ask him about his size.
Extremely strange?
Needless to say, Danielle's plan didn't work out as intended. But that's not because Talon's a bad guy, or that he emasculates Yohan, or Danielle still has feelings for her ex. The problem was with how Danielle handled the situation. I think we've all seen this problem before, right? Partner A, Danielle, wants to do something, hang out with her ex, that makes partner B, Yohan, uncomfortable, and they have to figure it out together. It could be hanging out with your ex, or going to a strip club, or your partner wearing revealing clothing, or inviting your friend to a wedding. Whatever the problem is, the structure of the problem is the same. And because this problem can be thought of as a meta problem typical in all relationships, it's really important to understand the structure of the problem and understand what you're ultimately trying to solve for. For instance, if you're negotiating the price of a car with a used car salesman, at the end of the day, you're both trying to get the best deal you can, even at the cost of the relationship in the long term. But if you're negotiating an issue with your partner, you both still might want to get your way, but at the end of the day, you want the relationship to be the best it can be over the long term, even at the cost of you getting exactly what you want in this instance. Are you looking for a desired outcome this time, or are you looking for the relationship's health long term? And if you want to optimize for the relationship, you really can't let yourself get stuck on the issue of the day.
If I don't control a thing, it doesn't get done. That's my experience with Yohan.
Unfortunately, despite the prevalence of this kind of problem in a lot of relationships, a lot of people really get up. So before I show you how Danielle fails this challenge, first let's briefly go over 3 principles that will lead you to a successful navigation through relationship problems like these. The first principle is non-judgment. Everyone disagrees or has problems to solve eventually, but the key here is to not blame each other for there being a problem. You're on the same side, so you should try to solve the problem as a team. The key here is non-judgment. You should never blame your partner for having feelings. The second principle is understanding. How does your partner feel? What are they worried about? Why are they worried? And you want to ask these questions with compassion, like you truly, genuinely want to understand. You don't want to ask it like, God, why are you so worried? What's the big deal? And the final principle is care and comfort. Show each other that you care, that you want to solve problems together, that the relationship and each other's feelings are your #1 priority. Because when it comes to relationship hurdles like these, the problem really isn't with the ex. It's about feeling safe and understood, and like your partner cares about your feelings and wants you to be happy. So, 3 principles: non-judgment, understanding, care, and comfort. With that in mind, let's see how they do. Danielle says that Yohan is a very jealous person, which already gets us off on the wrong foot. When people say things like, my partner's just jealous or insecure, I think what they're really trying to say is, my partner is overly jealous or unreasonably insecure. Because if we accept that someone is being unreasonable, then it follows that the problem is not with me, but with them. You're too jealous. But that premise fails right out of the gates because that implies that there is a right and a wrong amount of emotion to have, which is silly when you think about it. And because Danielle is judging him, Yohan gets defensive and says, I'm not overly jealous. I'm a very normal and reasonable amount of jealous given the situation. We could debate that, but I think what Yohan's really trying to say here is, my feelings are valid. Don't dismiss them. And he's right. Now, if Danielle said,
Yohan is more sensitive around seeing exes than I am,
or even,
he's more of the jealous type than I am, and that's something we gotta figure out,
then alright, fair enough. Observations are okay. Judgments are not. As it stands, it sounds like she's judging him and using his feelings against him. So we've failed the first step. By the way, for anyone who's found themselves in Yohan's position, instead of trying to convince the other person that you're not jealous, you could just lean into it like Jen does.
I feel like I am that person that's always like, oh, they're going out with their ex or whatever, but I should be beyond that. I need to have evolved to be like, I need to trust the person. If I can't trust them, well then why am I in the relationship to begin with?
I think it'd be a lot easier for the Danielles of the world to have sympathy for that, because then they don't feel like the scared person is blaming them for their feelings. It's like if two idiots are arguing over Twitter and one of them's like, talk all that shit, you gonna say it to my face? But the other guy's just like, no man, you kicked my ass in person, that's why I said it over Twitter. Alright, fair enough. On the other hand, you can hear the judgment in Danielle's voice, even when she's talking about herself.
I'm very different in that I want to meet all the people. I want to know about you. And no one else is a threat to me because no one else is me.
I always found this argument kind of odd, because even if you were truly irreplaceable, that doesn't guarantee that anyone likes you. Anyway, it's fine to have this opinion, but the problem only comes when you think that this is the only correct opinion to have. Unfortunately, her explanation gets even worse.
Either you love me and you trust me, or you're never going to be happy in this relationship with me because I live in the world. Like, I don't, keep to myself. I have a big circle,
This could be taken out of context, but there's a lot wrong with this. It's not black and white. It's not either they agree with me or they need to get out. And if you do believe that, then, well, I hope you have a lot of hobbies because you're about to have a very lonely life. But the bigger issue is in her explanation. Because I live in the world. That doesn't really mean anything to me, and it comes across like a dismissive way of saying, I'm the normal one, so you can either grow up and be normal too, or you're wrong. That's a very self-righteous, black and white way of seeing things. You either live in the world like me, like a normal, real adult, or you don't. It's judgmental and does not imply a desire to understand or even entertain any alternative explanations. So, she's not doing great so far. But what about care and comfort? Well, despite what we've seen so far, she actually does try to apologize. Sort of.
I will 100% acknowledge and apologize for any hurt that I caused my husband. I love him so much and I never ever want to hurt him. But you know what? The most important thing to me is that Yohan understands that it doesn't matter who I've had sex with because he is my husband and he's the person I want to be with and no one else is a threat to that.
I'm guessing this is where Danielle's perspective of what happened at the tell-all will start to differ from the rest of our perspectives. Because she might think that she apologized here, but I didn't hear an apology. When she says, I will acknowledge any hurts that I've caused, that sounds like she's entertaining a hypothetical, not actually apologizing. It'd be different if she said, I do acknowledge any hurts that I've caused. But even if she was apologizing, she's not talking to Yohan. She's talking to Sean, the host. Any hurt I've caused him. It could be that she actually is talking hypothetically, and that she still doesn't really understand or accept that she's done anything wrong. But it could also be that this is her actual attempt at acknowledging any potential wrongdoing. Maybe apologizing is very hard for her, and being brief, indirect, and hypothetical about it makes it easier for her to even get there. Regardless, it was sort of an attempt, and she does keep trying after this a bit, so I can applaud her for that.
I understand that Yohan is upset about the situation. I understand that he's upset about Thielen.
No, stop. Don't talk to us. Yohan, my partner, my love. I understand that you are upset about this situation. Talk to Yohan. Connect with your partner. Don't perform for us.
I understand that he's upset about Thielen. I don't know what I can do to make that better because I can't change the past, so...
We still haven't heard any accountability, Danielle. That's not an apology. You have not apologized. And outside of indirect hypotheticals, you haven't validated any of Yohan's feelings either. Now, maybe she did and they just cut it out. That's always a possibility. But I feel like if she was genuinely apologetic and understood how she hurt Yohan's feelings, that sentiment would be more obvious in her demeanor, even here. But at least in the edit we've seen so far, I haven't seen any of that. Again, I don't want Yohan to feel hurt is not the same thing as saying, I don't want you to feel hurt, Yohan, which is also not the same thing as saying, I'm sorry that I hurt you, Yohan. And this lack of direct accountability is a pattern. Earlier in the episode, Sean asked Danielle what she thought the relationship's biggest problem was, and Danielle danced around it there too.
We're both very emotional, and we get very passionate when we feel things, and sometimes we say things that we don't really mean in the moment, and then once we reflect and we think about the situation, I think sometimes we can be a little bit more reasonable.
Although sharing accountability like that can be a sign of humility and camaraderie, that's really only the case when someone less at fault says it, not the other way around. Because when you involve other people in taking accountability when you're the one who's primarily to blame, it kind of feels like you're weaseling out of taking responsibility for your actions. So when Danielle says things like they both need to work on their temper and getting heated in the moment and saying things they don't mean, when, again, at least in the edit we've seen, all of the evidence suggests that Danielle is the only one who does that and that Yohan is actually a pretty cool cucumber who, if anything, needs to be more expressive. It just sounds like she's aware of what people might say about her, but doesn't feel comfortable enough to acknowledge that she actually does the things that people say she does. So if we were to check in with the scorecard now, although I think that there was more effort placed in the care and comfort section, and I do applaud her for the efforts, I still don't think she passed. I mean, ultimately, Yohan's the one grading her, but considering they break up at the end of this episode, I think Yohan agrees with me. But before we get to the breakup itself, there is one more extra credit section we have to go over. And that comes when Tim and Veronica ask her,
what if he just wasn't comfortable with that?
I think that that would be really dangerous for our relationship.
For him to not want to have a hangout session with the last guy you were sleeping with?
I mean, for him to decide that who my friends can be, yeah, that would be a problem for me. It almost seems like your wife is property and I should have a say over what.
That would be dangerous for us. That means I'm his property and he can decide my life for me. All because your partner is uncomfortable with you hanging out with the last person you slept with. The cast does a great job in backing Yohan up here, trying to explain that it's not necessarily a control thing, but sometimes you have to compromise, make sacrifices, think about the other person. All great advice. But I think this demonstrates a bigger issue with Danielle that she would benefit from understanding. You don't have to see it as either you decide or he decides what your future is. Neither of you own the other person. In a healthy relationship, nobody wants to control their partner. I don't think it's Yohan's desire to decide for Danielle what she must do. I think he wants her to understand how he feels and to care about how he feels. And if she approached the situation with non-judgment, understanding, and care, I'd bet Yohan wouldn't be so upset about the ex. Because at the end of the day, I don't think this problem was really about the ex. The real problem is feeling safe and secure and cared for in your relationship. I don't know if this is just a language barrier that's making it harder to talk about this problem, or if this is an indicator of an impaired sense of empathy on Danielle's part, or if something else is getting in the way, but Danielle is missing the forest for the trees. She's optimizing for the outcome and not for the relationship. But unfortunately for her, Yohan's made his decision. He's breaking up with her. And what's even worse, everyone seemed to miss why.
Yo estoy con Daniel hasta que se cumpla el contrato de la casa. Cuando se termine el contrato, ella coge su lado y yo el mío.
Yohan's finally done it. They're breaking up. This is tough, so let's see how Danielle handles this.
The fact that he saw Taylor walk in this room is why he's responding that way.
That's insulting. Imagine, after all the invalidation, you finally break up with Danielle, and all she says is, nah, you don't really feel like that. You're just saying that because you're threatened. Bro, I'd be livid. No, it's not because of him. It's because I don't want to be with you anymore.
Pero ya no quiero estar con Daniel. Ya no tengo el mismo amor que sentía por ella.
Oh, well, I guess I got a bit ahead of myself there. But while Danielle's judgment continues, Yohan's about to show everyone why seeking understanding is so important.
Cuando empezamos la relación, Daniel y yo le dije, no quiero es pareja en esta relación porque tuve una mala experiencia con una pareja igual. Daniela, eso se le entró por aquí y le salió por aquí.
Would you look at that? Yohan has had bad experiences with people and their exes. That's a really important detail to know. He says that he told Danielle in the beginning of their relationship, but she didn't really listen. I'm not sure how much of this is really Danielle's fault. I would have hoped that Danielle would prod more and try to understand the origins of his insecurity, but it's also a little bit on Yohan to remind Danielle of this in case she didn't remember that conversation from months and months ago. Either way, I have to think that if Danielle knew this information at the time, it would have made it easier for her to find compassion for him. And that is why seeking understanding is so important. Although, if this was news to Danielle, you'd think she'd show some remorse about it now, like, oh my god, I had no idea, that makes sense, I'm so sorry, or something like that, but we don't see that, so I'm not sure. But maybe we should give her a break and extend some of that non-judgment, understanding, and care to her in this situation. I mean, she is getting broken up with live on TV. She might be experiencing a lot of embarrassment and shame and humiliation and fear. This could be really terrible for her. How is she handling this?
Danielle, how are you feeling right now?
It just feels ridiculous.
I'm going to assume that she is feeling a high amount of stress and anxiety in this situation, and really we're just watching the coping mechanisms kick in front of us, but it still fits the pattern of dismissive behavior. So not only have we not solved the Taylor thing, there's also one more issue we need to talk about, and that is how the cast talks about this. Danielle has been routinely dismissing his feelings, insulting him, and not taking accountability for any of her actions. And because of that, he broke up with her and said explicitly it's because of how she acts and the constant disrespect that he's breaking up with her. So you'd think the following discussion by the cast would reflect that in some way, right? But instead, half the cast gets sucked into a completely separate discussion about power and control.
He's using this to control the situation with her.
If I don't control a thing, it doesn't get done.
There's a difference between equal partners and being submissive.
Eres el hombre de la casa, sí. Y tú quieres que tu autoridad como el hombre de la casa se respete, pero...
I think he wants to appear like he has power in a situation. He's never really learned how to have a healthy relationship. So it's like, I have to either be unbelievably patient or I have to leave him. It's like, I don't see him changing.
So now, not only is Danielle not taking what he says seriously, but half the cast isn't either. Am I in crazy town? I must have missed something, right? My partner never takes what I say seriously, so I'm breaking up with her. Oh, he's just saying that. Everyone's talking about this like it comes down to a game of who wears the pants in the relationship, and Yohan wants to be man of the house and Danielle doesn't want to be submissive. But I think we're totally missing the point. It's about showing care to your partner. It's about cultivating a spirit of generosity and compassion and love for each other. It's about feeling safe and respected in a relationship. From what we've seen on screen, Danielle has acted like an entitled, dismissive brat to him all season long, and Yohan finally says he's sick of it. She dismissed his dream of coming to the US and called him crazy for it. She dismissed his new business venture and called him a child running a lemonade stand. She dismissed his offer to help pay for rent and shamed him for not having as much money as she does as an American coming from New York City, and then dismissed his feelings of discomfort around her seeing her ex. He tries breaking up with her, to which Danielle says is ridiculous. He tries explaining that, because of her actions, he doesn't see the point in continuing to invest in the relationship, to which Danielle scoffs at in another attempt to basically call him stupid.
Is he really serious?
And when he says he's done with the relationship, he keeps having to say, no, I'm serious. I swear on my mother's life. I mean it. All because Danielle can convince Gabe and Veronica that, well, he doesn't really feel this way. He's just saying this because he's jealous over my ex. This is just some psychological power trick to regain control. Or Danielle keeps hurting his feelings and he doesn't want to be with her anymore. Which one sounds more likely to you? Despite how it may seem, I don't hate Danielle. I understand her logic of not wanting to be controlled and thinking that it's dangerous to allow the precedent in the relationship that your partner can dictate those sort of things. But I think the Taylor situation is a lot different than if Yohan was jealous about Danielle saying hi to the barista that was a little too nice to her that one time. To me, there's kind of a scale of there's the barista situation, which is pretty harmless and would be somewhat unusual if someone was really worried about that. And then at least for me, somewhere up here is then an ex-romantic partner whom they had a connection with and maybe broke up because they just went separate ways or had different goals. But for me personally, I think what tops the list is if that person was just a fun bunny connection. I don't know. It's hard to describe. It feels different to me. I don't know. It feels like even if I had a Taylor equivalent in my life, which I don't personally, but if I did and my partner wasn't comfortable with it, I just feel like it'd be pretty easy for me to go, yeah, I can understand why that'd make you feel uncomfortable. You know, it's just a couple months. It's not a big deal. You know, I don't want to stress you out. So I won't hang out with them anymore. So I think the primary problem with Danielle is the extrapolation and taking this one instance and then making it a philosophical argument about control. The discussion about control is a valid one, but I don't see it being valid here. That then begs the question of why is she going there? When I was making this video and I started noticing how much she was talking about control and power dynamics, it made me a little bit worried about Danielle. Now, power and control is kind of a hot button topic on the internet and common relationship advice these days. So it could be that she's just been hearing a lot about it and reading a lot about it and is reading into situations and reducing the complexities of all life and human emotions and relationships down to power and control, and that's what must be happening here, which I think would be overly reductionist and closed-minded to Yohan's point of view, so that comes with its own problems. But I also wonder if this is a more deep-seated pathological perception that she has towards the world at large. It could be that, based off her upbringing or previous romantic experiences, that she really doesn't believe that you can truly cooperate with a partner like that, and that everything ultimately does come down to power and control because that's what her previous experiences in life have taught her. If she had a schema all about control and power and there's no true cooperation in that sense in relationships, you might expect someone in that position to use their power a lot to push other people around. Now, a lot of people will use their power to get their way, but they usually hide it or show some remorse about it or some guilt. But one of the most frustrating things about Danielle is that she does it so flagrantly and blatantly and doesn't seem to care. She's always in the one-on-ones essentially bragging with a smirk on her face about, oh, well, Yohan doesn't know this yet, but we are going to live in the Dominican Republic because I'm the American, and if I don't want to go to America, then he's not going to America. Ha ha ha. She shows no real shame in it. So it makes me think, is that some defense mechanism, or does she just lack the internal programming to imagine how other people interpret that, as in, you suck? Is she leaning into it as a coping mechanism and just owning that she's a villain? Or does she truly not really get that using her power in that way is a bad guy thing to do? I don't really know which one it is. I can't imagine either of them being the result of a healthy, love-filled life. Unless this whole thing is an act for TV, which, I mean, then whatever the cause of her behavior, it was probably not the result of good things happening to her in her life. I try to keep my criticism to the characters on the show to their behavior and not their character as a person, but some of the comments on my videos in the past have still been pretty nasty. If you're still watching at this point, then I'm probably not worried about you, and maybe it comes with the territory with talking about people that people have strong reactions to and potential triggers, you know, in their own romantic lives. Anyway, I'm rambling. Thank you for watching this far in the video, and I'll see you in the next one. If you like this video on Danielle, I actually made 3 other ones for you to check out right here in this playlist. Otherwise, I'll link my favorite one here. See you next time.